The coaster under my beer was dying a slow, ugly death. The cardboard was soaked through, the edges turned up, and the wet ring bleeding out under my glass made a faint circle stain on the old varnished bar top. I watched it spread like a bad decision and checked my watch for the third time in 5 minutes. Banks owed me for this. The rusty anchor was loud and tired. Tin ceiling, neon signs that hummed, lemon cleaner fighting with the smell of old beer. Somebody's sad classic rock playlist echoed off the walls. Friday night in a place that did not deserve Friday night. I was supposed to be on a blind date. Banks had said it with a straight face. She's perfect for you, man. Smart, stubborn, and she needs someone who understands buildings more than brunch. I told him he was full of it. He laughed and sent me the time and place anyway. So I sat at the bar in my usual gray t-shirt and worn jeans, boots on the rail, trying to decide if this was a joke or a pity project. I wasn't the blind date type. I was the does calculations in his truck at midnight type. The guy you called when your beam sagged or your floor sloped enough to make drinks slide. The door opened behind me. I felt the rush of cold night air on my neck. I didn't turn right away. I took another drink, told myself it was just another couple or some regulars. Then the air shifted. Voices dipped. A few heads turned. I glanced at the mirror behind the bar. She walked in like she had somewhere important to be, and this was a stop she couldn't skip. Black dress, simple, but clean lines. Dark hair loose over her shoulders, eyes sharp, scanning the room, not hunting for attention, hunting for something specific. When her gaze landed on me in the mirror, I forgot what time it was. She came straight toward me. Boots, not heels. That was the first detail my brain grabbed. The second was the strip of white primer smudged along the inside of her wrist, and the strip of blue tape wrapped around one finger. Work marks. They did not match the dress. "Sawyer?" she asked. Her voice was low, steady, with a tired edge like she had argued with the world all day and showed up anyway. I turned on my stool. "Yeah, that's me." She held out her hand. "Adeline." I shook it. Her grip was firm, not dainty. Her fingers were rougher than I expected. That small fact hit me harder than the black dress. I opened my mouth to say something normal. "Nice to meet you," or "Banks set this up." She beat me to it. "This isn't a date," she said. Then she reached into the giant tote bag hanging on her shoulder, pulled out a rolled blueprint, and dropped it on the bar between us. The bartender raised an eyebrow, then moved down to refill someone's beer. The blueprint thunked down like a third person joining us. Adeline spread it open with quick hands. The paper was creased, smudged with pencil, coffee, and what looked like drywall dust. Hudson Hall. My brain snapped into focus. I knew the name. Old municipal hall on the edge of the city. Brick, big windows, beautiful trusses. Empty for years. People talked about it like a ghost. "The city inspector comes in 6 weeks," she said, smoothing the page with both palms. Her fingers shook once, then forced themselves steady. "If this building doesn't pass, the bank calls the loan. I lose everything." I looked down at the plan, red circles along one exterior wall, notes in the margins. Questions. Worries. "Banks told you I'm an engineer," I said. "Banks told me you're the guy who walks into a building and knows which part is lying," she replied. I snorted once. That sounded like my friend. "Order a drink," I said, reaching into my pocket for my pen. "Then tell me what's moving." She ordered whiskey, neat, no sugar, no garnish. For the next 20 minutes, she walked me through Hudson Hall, the north wall cracking. Plaster spiderwebbing every time trucks hit the street outside. Old timber trusses. Iron shoes at the ends. Scary vibrations. A bank clock counting down. I listened, wrote notes in the blank spaces. I could feel her eyes on my face every time I paused. Like she was trying not to hope, but she couldn't help it. "Come see it," she said finally. "Please. If you say it can't be saved, I'll believe you. I just need someone who isn't trying to buy it from me to say it." "Who's trying to buy it?" I asked. Her mouth went tight. "Vance." The name tasted familiar and bad. Developer, cheap finishes, unsafe shortcuts. Buildings that looked pretty for 2 years and then started to complain. I checked my watch one more time, but not for the same reason. 6 weeks. That wasn't a lot of time to fix a century of neglect. Tomorrow morning, I said. 9. Relief hit her so hard it showed in her shoulders. Her fingers loosened on the edge of the blueprint. Hudson Hall, main entrance, she said. I'll be there. We finished our drinks. We didn't talk about favorite movies or hobbies. We talked about load paths and rotten sill plates. When she laughed once at something I said about city inspectors loving clipboards more than coffee, it was quick and real. It got under my skin. When she walked out, she left the blueprint with me. I folded it careful, not like she had, like it was something that mattered. The next morning, Hudson Hall smelled like history in a long leak. I parked in front, killed the engine, and just sat there for a second. The building rose up from the sidewalk with big arched windows and a brick facade that was more scar than wall in some spots. Old carved stone letters spelled out Hudson Municipal Hall over the door. Someone had painted over the old city seal, but you could still see its outline under the new gray. It was beautiful and tired, like it had been waiting a long time to be useful again. Adeline stood at the front doors in work boots and jeans, flannel shirt rolled to her elbows. Hair was tied back. No black dress today, no decoration. Just a woman who looked like she had been at war with a building and lost some rounds but refused to surrender. "You're on time," she said. "I like old buildings more than blind dates," I answered. That got me the first real smile. It hit like sunlight through dusty glass. Small, but strong enough to change the room. Inside, the hall opened up into a wide space with tall windows and a balcony level. Dust floated in the beams of light. Every step echoed. The air tasted like pine, rust, and plaster. "North wall," she said, leading me across the creaking floor. "Watch your step. The boards near the corner are iffy." She knew her building. That mattered. At the wall, she pointed up. "Every time a truck hits the street out front, the cracks grow. I patch. They come back." I didn't answer. Not yet. I walked up to the brick, pressed my palm against it, and closed my eyes. People think engineers only use calculators. The truth is, after enough years, your body becomes a sensor. I could feel low vibration humming through the masonry. Not much, just enough to be a problem over time. I tilted my head back and traced the line up to the trusses. The timber looked good on the surface. Old growth, big sections, no obvious splits. But where the wood met the iron shoe, the metal bloomed dark with rust. Rust swells as it grows. It pushes against whatever holds it. "It's not just the wall," I said quietly. "It's the connection." Adeline stepped closer, following my line of sight. "We sanded the rust and sealed it," she said. "I thought that would help." "You cleaned the symptom," I said, "not the cause. The iron is crushing the brick from the inside out. And the roof is using that as a bearing point. Every truck that hits the road out front shakes this connection. It gets worse a little bit at a time." Her face went pale. She hugged the rolled plans tighter to her chest. "Can we fix it?" Quote. "We," I repeated. Her eyes flashed. "I bought this place with my grandmother's inheritance. There is no safety net. I am the owner, the general contractor, the painter, and the person who cleans up after the guys who quit because it's too hard. I'm not going anywhere." There was a tremor in her hand, but her voice stayed level. She wasn't asking to be saved. She was asking to be told the truth. "It's surgical," I said. "We shore the roof with temporary supports. We open the wall around the bearing. We replace or reinforce the connection. Then we stitch everything back. Done right, it will outlive both of us." "And wrong?" she asked. "Wrong, it fails when the hall is full and you're the one on the news," I said. I didn't sugarcoat. "Sugar kills people in my line of work." She exhaled, slow and tight. "I have a budget." She told me the number. It was small enough to make me want to laugh. I didn't. "That covers materials," I said. "Barely." "Then I am the labor," she shot back. "Teach me. I'll do whatever you say." I watched her for a long moment, the tape on her finger. The paint in her hair, the dark circles under her eyes, the line of her jaw when she talked about losing everything. I should have said no. Too tight, too messy, too personal. Instead, I heard myself say, "I charge double for weekends." Her eyebrows arched. "Fine," she said. "And I picked the music." I let out a short breath that might have been a laugh. Deal? We shook on it. Her hand was warm in mine, steady this time. She looked up at the trusses again, then back at me. Do you really think we can do it? 6 weeks? I followed her gaze. The old wood seemed to be watching us. We don't have a choice, I said, and I don't miss deadlines. I meant it. I just didn't know yet how many things and people were going to try to make me fail. Okay, she said. Then let's start. Quote, I picked up my tape measure. She picked up a notebook. Somewhere under my boots, Hudson Hall hummed like it was listening. And outside the wide front windows, the world kept moving, unaware that the clock had just started ticking on both the building and whatever this thing was between me and the woman who refused to let it go. By the end of week 2, Hudson Hall had taught me 2 things. First, the building was worse than I thought. Second, Adeline was a problem I hadn't accounted for. Not a problem like a bad beam or a lazy crew. A different kind of problem. The kind that made my focus slide whenever she walked into frame. We opened up the north wall and found more rot hiding under good timber. Brick that looked solid until you touched it, then crumbled like stale bread. Iron shoes that had been quietly eating themselves for 100 years. Every time I thought I'd found the worst of it, the building showed me another weak spot. We worked long days. My shoulders ached at night. My hands stayed scraped and stiff. That part 1 was used to. What I wasn't used to was the way my brain kept tracking Adeline without my permission. I'd be on the scaffold with the laser level, measuring deflection at the truss. Numbers steady. Good. Then she'd walk under me with a stack of shims, hair coming loose from her tie, a streak of white dust across her cheekbone. I'd watch the dust rise behind her boots and miss the next reading. Once, I went to grab a wrench that wasn't where I thought I left it. I stood there for a full second, hand hovering in empty air, staring like an idiot. She looked up from the sawhorse. You okay? She asked. Fine, I said, grabbing the wrench from the next tray over like that had been my plan. My brain didn't agree. My brain liked clean work and no distractions. It did not like the way her laugh pulled my attention faster than any alarm. We were working late on a Tuesday when the building decided to join the fight. A dull thud rolled up from somewhere under us, followed by a sharp hiss. Not air. Water. Stay here, I said, already moving. I took the basement stairs 2 at a time. The air down there was damp and metallic. My flashlight beam swung over old pipes, stacked chairs, and a standpipe that was spraying a hard, angry stream straight across the floor. The water was aiming right at the temporary electrical panel we'd set up for tools. Perfect. The shutoff valve was old and frozen. I locked a big pipe wrench around it, planted my boots, and drove my weight into the handle. Metal screamed. My shoulders burned. The valve finally gave and turned. The spray collapsed to a trickle, stopping inches from the live box. Behind me, I heard boots on the stairs. Thought I told you to stay. I called without looking. Adeline ignored that. She came down anyway, jeans damp around the cuffs, flashlight in her hand. She didn't panic. She didn't flail. She grabbed a rag off a shelf and wiped the water line back from the base of the panel, keeping it clear. When she looked at me, her eyes were wide but steady. That could have lit this place up, she said. Yeah, I answered, catching my breath. Back upstairs, the office felt almost cozy after the basement. She plugged in a small space heater, pointed it at me, and handed over a towel from a plastic tub marked clean. Dry off, she said. If you fry yourself, I can't afford a replacement. That your way of saying thank you? I asked. She gave a short, tired half smile. That's my way of saying this building is not allowed to kill you. I stood there in front of that cheap heater, shirt steaming slowly, while she sat on the edge of the desk, watching me like she was trying to decide if letting me stay in her mess was a bigger risk than a cracked truss. Back to the Jacks, I said finally. She hopped down. Back to the Jacks. On Thursday, Trouble walked in wearing a beige trench coat and polished shoes. I was tightening bolts on the mid-span scaffold when the front doors opened. The footsteps didn't sound like workers. No shuffle, no weight of tool belts. Just smooth, confident steps that thought they owned the floor. Ms. Thomas, a man called, voice smooth and loud enough to carry. Adeline was at a work table, marking up a fresh set of plans. She didn't flinch. Her shoulders straightened. She set the pencil down slowly and turned. "Vance," she said. Her tone could have cut steel. He walked into the open hall like he was inspecting a stage he'd ordered. Beige trench coat, neat hair, no dust anywhere on him. Another man hovered just behind him, clutching a tablet and looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Still playing contractor?" Vance asked, smiling like a wolf in a nice suit. "We're on schedule," she said. "What do you want?" The man with the tablet cleared his throat. "Miss Thomas, I'm with the bank. As per the terms of your loan, if the building is not certified safe for occupancy by the 15th, 12 days from now," Vance added smoothly, like a man announcing a showtime, "the bank calls the note due, 500,000. He let the number hang in the air. Adeline's fingers tightened around the rolled plans. The paper creased under her grip. Her breathing picked up, just once. Then she forced it back under control. I climbed down from the scaffold. Not fast, controlled. My boots hit each rung in a slow, heavy rhythm, metal, wood, concrete. I kept a big wrench in my hand. Not raised, just present. The bank guy glanced at me, unsure. Vance's eyes slid over my boots, my faded t-shirt, the dust on my hands. "You must be Sawyer Cooper," he said. "The engineer." "I restore landmarks," I said. "And I don't appreciate someone threatening my job site." "This site belongs to the bank," Vance replied. "I'm just here to offer Adeline a simple solution." He turned back to her. "Sell to me today. I cover the debt. You walk away before you drown." Her jaw clenched. "I'm not selling." Something hot climbed my spine. I stepped closer, enough that my shadow cut across Vance's polished shoes. "She isn't selling," I said. The bank representative shifted his weight. "Miss Thomas, we just need to remind you of the risk. If you don't pass inspection, we're installing the final tension rods next week," I cut in, looking straight at him. "Inspection's Friday. We pass. You keep your asset. Everyone walks away happy." "Tight window," he mumbled. "I don't miss deadlines," I said. Vance's smile thinned. "Accidents happen," he said. "Old buildings are unpredictable." "Not on my watch," I answered. He studied me, looking for a crack. "You know her entire future is sitting on your calculations, right?" he said softly. "That's a lot of weight." I held his stare. "I carry weight for a living." He shifted his focus back to Adeline. "Think about my offer," he said. "You're out of your depth here. This isn't a passion project anymore. It's a liability." Adeline lifted her chin. "This is an active construction site," she said. "Hard hats required. You're in violation of safety policy." Vance laughed once, sharp. "Are you serious?" "Leave," she said. Vance's eyes went cold. He turned on his heel like leaving was his idea. "I'll see you on inspection day," he called over his shoulder. The bank representative gave Adeline a tight, apologetic smile and followed. When the door finally shut, the hall seemed to exhale. I grabbed a bottle of water, cracked it open, and handed it to her. She took it with both hands. Her fingers shook for a second before she got them under control. 500,000, she whispered. "I didn't tell you that part." "Doesn't matter," I said. Her eyes snapped to mine. "Why'd you step in like that?" I thought about saying something easy. Because I'm nice. Because Banks asked. Because I love a good fight. Instead, I told the truth. "Because I don't like bullies," I said. "And because I know what it's like to watch something fall and wish you'd done more." Her gaze searched my face. "Banks said you don't take risks anymore," she said. "Not since." "Banks talks too much." I cut in. I took a breath. "I don't gamble. That's different. I calculate. And right now, every calculation says you and this building deserve better than Vance." Her mouth twitched like she wanted to smile but couldn't quite manage it. "I can't pay you what you're worth," she said. "I'm getting paid," I answered. "You're lying," she said quietly. "I'm an engineer," I replied. "I don't lie. I round in your favor." This time, the smile showed. Just a little, but it was there. "Back to work," I said. "Timeline's tight." Quote. She nodded, squared her shoulders, and set the empty bottle down on a crate. The hall still smelled like dust and rust and old pine, but under it, something else had started to build. Not safety, not yet. Trust. Just a little, And for a man who hadn't trusted his own judgment in years, that was the most dangerous thing in the room. 4 days before inspection, the building reminded us who was boss. We were installing the last steel flitch plate on the north beam. It was the big one, the kind of plate that made the whole structure breathe easier once it was in place. Problem was, it weighed close to 500 pounds and the space was too tight for any real machinery. So we used a chain hoist. Old school, but legal. The red stop work tag from the earlier complaint still hung on the scaffold, but the compliance officer had signed off after our last fix. We were cleared to work on paper anyway. Keep the chain vertical, I called up. No side load. If it swings, you let it go. Adeline stood on the deck of the scaffold, boots planted, hands on the hoist chain. Sweat darkened the collar of her flannel even in the cold hall. "I heard you the first 8 times," she said, breathless but steady. The plate rose inch by inch. Metal groaned. The rope creaked. The air smelled thick with iron and dust. My shoulders were already protesting from guiding the swing. Then I heard a sound that didn't belong. A tiny, sharp ping. Like a spring snapping. "Stop!" I snapped. Adeline froze. The plate hung suspended halfway to the beam. I stepped closer, eyes on the hoist. The safety latch on the gear housing sat at a strange angle. I could see the edge of bright grind marks on the metal. "What is it?" she asked. The latch gave way. "Let go!" I yelled. She dropped the chain instantly. The plate dropped 3 feet, swung like a pendulum, and slammed into the scaffold post where she'd been standing a second before. The whole structure shuddered. A bucket of bolts on the top deck tipped and rained metal down onto the boards. I moved before my brain caught up. I grabbed Adeline around the waist and yanked her back against the brick wall. Bolts clanged on the deck where her boots had been. Dust exploded around us, filling my mouth, my nose, my head. For a second, all I could see was gray. My lungs locked. The sound around me went far away. Another job site flashed up in my mind. Another beam, another shout, another drop. An empty hard hat spinning across a slab. Sawyer. Adeline's voice was close, real. Now. I blinked hard until her face came into focus inches from mine. Her eyes were wide. She had both fists twisted in my shirt. Her breathing was sharp and shallow. "You okay?" I asked, voice rough. She gave one quick nod. "You?" I let my hands run over her arms, her shoulders, the side of her head, fast but careful, checking for blood, broken bones, anything that meant we were going to the hospital instead of back to work. Nothing, just trembling muscles and adrenaline. I exhaled. "You're not allowed to die in this building," I said. "That's the rule." Her mouth twitched once like she wanted to laugh and couldn't quite manage it. "Yes, sir." My attention snapped back to the hoist. The safety latch looked wrong. Up close, I could see it clearly. Someone had ground the stop down, not where. Fresh, bright metal marks. I felt heat rise in my chest. "You don't get a failure like that on accident," I said. Adeline followed my gaze. Her face went cold. "Vance," she whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The building had just tried to turn his threat into our problem. Before I could decide what to do next, the side door banged open. A man in a yellow vest walked in, tablet in hand. Behind him, in a dark coat and smug expression, was Vance. "City Safety Compliance," the vest said. "We got a report of hazardous rigging and an incident in progress." Vance held up his phone like a trophy. "I called it in," he said. "I have footage from across the street. They're using equipment beyond their capacity." The compliance officer's eyes swept the room. His gaze hit the swinging plate, the scattered bolts, the scaffold that was still rattling. He frowned and tapped his tablet. "Stop work order," he said. "Effective immediately. All mechanical lifting and power tools are prohibited until we complete a full investigation. Minimum 72 hours. 72 hours? Adeline's voice cracked. "Our inspection is Friday." "Talk to the permit office," he replied. He slapped a bright red tag on the scaffold. I stepped in front of Adeline, blocking his view of her hands still shaking. "Someone tampered with the hoist," I said. "Look at the latch. That's not wear, that's a grinder." "You can submit your allegation in writing," he said, bored. "Meanwhile, you're done." Vance's smile widened. "I hate to say I told you so," he said quietly, "but I did try to warn you, Miss Thomas. Old buildings are unpredictable." He was enjoying this. Enjoying watching her lose everything under the cover of safety. "Get out," I said. Vance tilted his head. "Excuse me?" "This is an active site under a stop work order," I said. "You don't belong here. Get out." The compliance officer shifted uneasily. Vance's eyes flicked to the wrench in my hand. He took a small step back. "See you at the inspection?" he said, and turned on his heel. The door closed behind them. Silence slammed down just as hard as the plate had. The big hall suddenly felt very small. Adeline sank down onto a stack of lumber. She pressed her knuckles to her mouth. Her shoulders shook once, then again. "It's over," she whispered. "I can't pass inspection without that plate. I can't install it without lifting equipment. If I violate the stop work order, the city shuts me down for good. The bank calls the loan. He wins." I sat on the crate across from her. My heart was still hammering from the drop, and the memory it woke up. But my voice came out steady. "Look at me," I said. She did. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears, but she didn't let them fall. "The order says no mechanical lifting and no power tools," I said. "That's specific. It doesn't say you can't stabilize with hand tools and manual rigging in an emergency." "This doesn't count?" she asked, a bitter edge to the words. A 500-pound plate almost crushed me, Sawyer. "It counts," I said. "That's why we finish. Safely, correctly, without giving them a reason to call this place a hazard." She stared at me like she was trying to see inside my skull. "You don't take chances," she said quietly. "Banks told me why, about Eric." The name hit like a punch. The memory of a different accident, a different failure, flashed up hard. My jaw locked. "I don't gamble," I said. "That's not what this is. This is physics. Leverage. Wedges. Hand tools. No motors, no gears, no hoists. We do it clean, or we don't do it at all." "And if the inspector walks in and sees us," she asked. "Then I lose my license," I said, "and you lose your building." The truth hung between us like another heavy plate. She closed her eyes for a second, then opened them. "So why even suggest it?" she asked. "Because the other option is letting Vance win," I said. "And I'm not leaving you here with a half-broken beam and a banker circling like a vulture." Her throat worked. She looked at the hanging plate, then at the cracked plaster, then back at me. "What do you need from me?" she asked. I held my hand out. "Everything," I said. "Your back, your brain, your hands on the wrench. I can't do this without you." She stared at my hand for a long beat. Then she reached out and took it. "Then tell me what to do," she said. We came back after dark. Hudson Hall looked different at night. Still tall, still stubborn, but the street noise faded, and the city lights turned the high windows into squares of deep blue. Inside, our battery work lights cast tight pools of yellow over the scaffold and the beam. The rest of the hall stayed in shadow. No music, no power saws. Every scrape and clink sounded too loud. I built a manual lifting system like something out of an old textbook. Anchor straps around sound beams. Blocks and tackle rated well above our load. Redundant ropes. Wedges ready. No chain hoist, no gears, nothing with a motor. I checked each knot twice. Then I checked it a third time because my hands still remembered what it felt like to hold a load that suddenly didn't exist under you. Adeline stood beside me with a clipboard and a pencil. "Angle," I said. She squinted at the inclinometer and the rope. 31 degrees. "Good," I said. "Clearance?" 2 inches to the underside of the beam, she replied. Her voice was steady now. Efficient. All business. We started to lift. This time, it was nothing but muscle and leverage. No click of gears, no easy chain pull. Just our shoulders, our legs, and the creak of old wood. The plate rose slowly. I nudged wedges under it at each stop. Adeline watched my hand signals and matched her pull to mine, step by step. My gloves started to burn at the seams. Sweat stung my eyes. The rope dug into my shoulder. Every inch felt like an hour. "Halfway," I grunted. "Copy," she said, shifting her stance. "Tell me when." We pulled again. Inch by inch, the plate climbed into place. By the time the steel kissed the underside of the beam, my arms were shaking so hard I could feel my heartbeat in my fingertips. "Almost there," I said, voice raw. "I'll hold, you bolt." "You can't hold that," she said. "I can hold long enough," I answered. I wedged my shoulder under the plate, took as much of the load as I could, and locked my legs into the scaffold. The manual rigging held most of it, but I could still feel the steel digging into the padding of my shirt. Adeline climbed up with a hand ratchet and a bag of bolts. The light haloed her hair in dusty gold. "Center bolt first," I said. "Then the corners, slow. Straight, no forcing." Her hands were trembling, but she set the first bolt into the hole. It slid through clean. The ratchet teeth clicked as she tightened it, sound sharp in the quiet hall. Click, click, click. "Next," I said, jaw clenched. She moved down the plate. My shoulders burned. My vision narrowed. For a heartbeat, I saw Eric again, heard the roar, felt the empty space where a man should have been. I forced my lungs to drag in air. "Look at me," Adeline said suddenly. I did. Her eyes were locked on mine, clear, fierce, present. "I've got it," she said. "Just hold." She turned back and cranked the second bolt home. By the fourth and last bolt, my legs were shaking so hard the scaffold buzzed. The final hole needed a hair of alignment. I used what was left in my arms to nudge the plate into line. "Now," I rasped. The last bolt slid through. She drove the nut down until it seated flush. Then she set the wrench down and checked each one with her fingers, just to be sure. When she was satisfied, she leaned back and exhaled. "It's in," she said. I let the weight shift fully into the rig, then slowly stepped out from under it. My arms dropped useless at my sides. My chest heaved. We stood there, both of us staring at the steel plate like it might fall just to spite us. It didn't. It held. The beam above it looked right. Solid. Adeline turned to me. Her eyes were shining, but not with panic this time. "Sawyer," she said quietly. I tried to answer. All that came out was a rough sound somewhere between a laugh and a breath. She stepped closer. Her fingers came up and framed my jaw, dusty and warm. She was careful, like she thought I might bolt if she moved too fast. "Breathe," she said. I did. Cold air, dust, the faint smell of vanilla from her skin. My heart was still racing, but it started to land somewhere steadier. "You don't have to," I started. She went up on her toes and kissed me. There was no easing into it. No testing the waters. It was a hard, grateful, relieved kiss right in the middle of the silent hall, with dust still floating in the work lights and steel cooling above our heads. My hands found her waist. I pulled her in, careful not to crush her, not to lose myself completely. Her fingers clenched in the back of my shirt. She made a small sound that went straight through my ribs. For the first time in a long time, my brain didn't jump to weight charts and failure modes. It just shut up. When we finally broke apart, our foreheads rested together. Her breath trembled against my mouth. "That okay?" I asked, voice low. She nodded once. "More than okay." We stood there like that for another moment. Then I stepped back, slowly, because the job still wasn't done, and inspection day was still coming. "Down," I said. "Careful, no hero moves." She smiled, small and real. "Yes, engineer." Quote, we climbed off the scaffold together, boots hitting the boards in sync. Hudson Hall creaked once, a low, settling sound through the beams. For the first time since I walked into that building, it felt less like a math problem waiting to fail, and more like something that wanted to stand. We still had an inspector to face, we still had Vance circling, but now we also had a beam that held, a plate that wouldn't fall, and a line we'd cross together. And no matter what the city or the bank decided, that felt like a load neither of us was going to carry alone again. Inspection day felt like waiting for a verdict. Hudson Hall was quiet for once. No saws, no drills, no music. Just the sound of old wood settling and my own pulse thudding in my ears. We had scrubbed what we could. Tools stacked neat. Scaffold tagged clean. The steel plate we fought for looked calm and solid above us, bolts lined up like a row of little promises. Adeline stood by the front doors in her boots and clean jeans. Same flannel, different energy. She looked steady now. Still tired, still wired, but steady. "You ready?" I asked. "No," she said, "but I am done being scared of him." Before I could answer, a dark sedan pulled up outside. Inspector Miller got out first. Thick gray hair, work boots, clipboard. He moved like every step had a purpose. Vance stepped out behind him in a long coat and polished shoes like he was walking into a boardroom. Adeline's shoulders went tight. She took one slow breath, then opened the door. "Morning," Miller said. "Morning," Adeline answered. "Thanks for coming." Vance didn't bother with small talk. "Let's not waste time," he said, stepping into the hall. "You saw the stop work order, Miller. They were caught using unsafe rigging. If that beam is not exactly as it was, this inspection fails." Miller gave him a look like he was an annoying pop-up ad. Then he turned to me. "You Sawyer Cooper?" he asked. "Yes, sir." "You the one who signed off on the stabilization plan you emailed my office?" "I am." He nodded once, then walked toward the north wall without another word. Vance stuck to his side like glue. I followed at a small distance. Adeline walked beside me. Her fingers brushed the back of my hand. I curled mine just enough that they touched. It was a small point of contact, but it grounded both of us. Miller stopped under the beam. He looked up at the new plate, the old timber, the brick. He did not rush. He took his time, eyes moving over every bolt, every washer, every joint. "Hoist?" he asked. "No mechanical hoist," I said. "Manual lift only. Blocks, tackle, wedges. Emergency stabilization under stopwork terms. No motors, no gears, no power tools." Vance scoffed. "Convenient story." Miller ignored him. He stepped closer to the beam, reached up, and ran his hand over the plate. His fingers landed on the gear housing of the old chain hoist, still hanging nearby, red-tagged and out of service. He bent in for a better look. Then he snorted once, low. "Who did this?" he asked. "Did what?" Vance said. Miller pointed to the safety latch. Even from the floor you could see it now, fresh grind marks on the steel. "Latch is cut," Miller said. "That's not wear. That's a grinder. Somebody wanted this to fail." Quote. His gaze slid to Vance. Vance put his palms up. "I have never touched that thing," he said fast. "I reported what I saw from the street. Unsafe equipment in use. I have video." "Yeah?" Miller said. "Show your video." Vance blinked. He hadn't expected that. He fumbled with his phone, pulled up a clip and held it out. Miller watched. So did I. The grainy footage showed the plate mid-air, Adeline at the hoist, me on the deck below. Then the latch slipped. The plate dropped and swung. The video cut off right before I grabbed her. Miller handed the phone back. "So you were standing across the street filming while a load was moving," he said. "Not calling the site, not calling my office, filming. Interesting choice." "I called as soon as I saw they were out of control," Vance said. "This place is a risk. Look at it. It should fail inspection." Miller looked again, but not at us, at the work. He checked the plate. He tested the bolts. He eyed the crack lines in the brick. He walked the span and tapped the timber with his knuckles. The sound came back solid and clean. Then he walked the perimeter, checking bracing, exits, lighting, emergency signs. His pen scratched on the clipboard. He did the job, nothing more, nothing less. When he came back to us, the hall felt like it was holding its breath. "Well?" Vance pushed. Miller set the clipboard flat against his thigh. "Structure is stable," he said. "Repairs are sound. Emergency work meets code. Hoist is tagged out and will be removed before final permit closure." He checked one last box. "Hudson Hall passes structural inspection," he said. "Occupancy approved." Adeline let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob, her hand clamped over her mouth. I felt my own lungs unlock. Vance took a step forward. "You can't be serious. After that video, after that hoist." "You want to talk about the hoist," Miller cut in. His voice went flat. "Let's talk about why the latch is ground down." "I already told you I don't." You own a lot of properties in this city, Vance, Miller said. I've signed off on some. I've flagged others. Now I'm going to go back and take another look at the ones I flagged. You just bought yourself extra attention. They stared at each other, two men who knew what power looked like from different sides. Miller turned to Adeline. You did good work, he said. Keep it that way. Thank you, she managed. He gave one curt nod and headed for the door. When the door closed behind him, Hudson Hall felt different. Lighter. Like the building itself had taken a full breath for the first time in years. Vance stayed another second. Eyes hot, jaw tight. This isn't over, he hissed at Adeline. She lifted her phone and held it up, screen facing him. It is for you, she said. You step 1 foot in this building again. I call the city, the bank, and every donor you ever sweet-talked. He held her stare. For once, she did not look away. Then he turned and walked out. Silence settled over the hall. Not heavy this time, just calm. Adeline turned to me. Her eyes were bright. This time she let the tears fall. 2 tracks down her dust-streaked cheeks. She laughed once, soft and shaky. We did it, she said. We did it, I answered. She stepped in close. Her boots brushed mine. Her hand came up and landed right over my heart. My shirt was still gritty from last night. Her palm was warm anyway. I know you hate risk, she said. I know what it cost you to trust me with those bolts. I swallowed. It was the only move that could work. That is not what I'm talking about, she said. Her thumb moved once against my chest. It felt like someone was tracing a fault line. You could have walked away when you saw the foreclosure risk. When you met Vance. When the hoist failed. She said, you stayed. I stayed because the building needed. She shook her head and stepped even closer. No, she said. You stayed. For me. She wasn't wrong. And I was done pretending she was. Yes, I said. For a beat, we just looked at each other. Then she went up on her toes and kissed me. Slow this time. Not adrenaline, not panic, just choice. I wrapped my arms around her and pulled her in. The building creaked above us, but not in warning. In approval. Banks texted me that night. He sent one line. So how was the joke date? I stared at the screen and then sent him a photo. Not of the beam, not of the plate. Of Adeline standing in the hall in her boots and flannel, hair down, sawdust in the air behind her, smiling like the future finally made sense. Under it, I typed. You were right. A week later, we went back to the Rusty Anchor. Same sticky bar, same bad coasters, same buzzing neon sign over the jukebox. But it felt different because she was next to me, not across the table as a stranger with blueprints. Adeline sat on the stool beside mine, one elbow on the bar, one boot hooked on the rung. Our shoulders touched. It felt like we had been sitting like that forever. This one is actually a date, she said, sipping her drink. You sure? I asked. No emergency load path checks, no bank reps hiding in the bathroom, no surprise inspections. She smiled over the rim of her glass. That smile. The one that wrecked my focus the first night, and still did. Just you, she said. And me. And the fact that my building still stands. Our hands found each other on the bar. Fingers laced. Simple, sure. I looked at her and let myself really feel it. The weight I had been carrying since Eric fell. The fear of another failure. The empty spaces in my life I had stuffed with work and numbers and safe choices. For the first time, it felt like maybe those spaces were not meant to stay empty. Adeline, I said, yeah? Next time my friends try to set me up on a date, I said, I'm going to listen. She laughed. Next time your friends try to set you up on a date, she said, tell them you're already taken. She squeezed my hand. I squeezed back. Outside, the city moved on. Cars passed. People walked. Life kept going. Inside, at a beat-up bar with bad coasters and better stories, I sat beside a woman who had almost lost everything and chose to fight instead. My friends thought they were playing a joke when they sent me to meet her. The punchline was simple. This was not a joke. It was the smartest thing they ever did.